Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for stopping by and watching this video. I do appreciate it. If you get a chance, please like and subscribe. It really helps me out. Alright, so for today's video, we're going to be covering an interesting topic, and that is, why do a lot of people say that the Glock Gen 3 is the best generation that Glock has come out with? The start of my journey in trying to understand why a lot of people say this. I know it's not everybody, but a very good 70% of people that I've come in contact with talking about Glocks in my career was always the Gen 3 is probably one of the best, if not the best generation that Glock has come out with. Even the armor in our police department, you know, when I would take I carried the Glock 23 Gen 3, I should say that first. And every once in a while, we would be talking about, you know, different Glocks and the generation Glock, and he would always say Glock Gen 3 is the best generation. And I didn't question it much, and then until I had a few people offer to buy my 23, the one I carried on duty, the Gen 3. And that's when I started asking, why is everyone saying that this generation is the best generation? And I really couldn't get a one straight answer. It was kind of all over the board all the time. So this is what really started me into trying to figure out why a lot of people say this about the Gen 3. So I started a journey, and that is really diving into the history of Glock, into the different specifications of every generation. And I do have a theory on why a lot of people say that the Gen 3 is the best generation for Glock. Okay, before I get to my conclusion or my theory on why I think a lot of people choose or like to say that the Gen 3 is the best generation, we do have to take a step back in history for a brief moment. Okay, let's get in briefly with starting at Gen 2, the changes that Glock has made. So in Gen 2 was released in 1988, and that was with the Glock 19. They wanted something smaller than the 17, just more compact, easier to conceal, especially with law enforcement really taking a hold of the Glock. Now, the compact version, the 19, which is considered, that's what we're going to kind of keep in mind as we go through these generations, just to keep it uniform. Now, from the Gen 1 to Gen 2, they did make some changes. One of the biggest things that they didn't come out till 92 with the 6-part upgrade, where they had some drop safety issues. I guess you can call it a safety recall. And that was with the extractor, spring-loaded bearing, firing pin spring, firing pin safety. All these things were upgraded with that came with that 6-part upgrade. They also had an additional recoil spring. They changed some things with the mag follower. Nothing crazy significant. I think that really what we're going to see is the Gen 2 to Gen 3 where we're going to see some of those significant changes. And this will kind of lead into my theory on the Gen 3 being the best generation of Glocks.
5, 4, 3, happy 1998!
So I don't want to spend too much time from the Gen 1, Gen 2, but I really want to focus here where we're going to see some changes from the Gen 2 to the Gen 3. So the Glock Gen 3 was introduced in 1998. Now, they also added some additional calibers during this time. You have 357 SIG appearing, you have 45 GAP appearing. Also, you have the introduction of the universal Glock rail. Now this was huge. This was allowing for the Glock to have, you know, lights and lasers and accessories on that rail system. They also added the thumb rest. We had the introduction of the finger grooves, which love them or hate them, it was a major change. So we also had, this is big here, a cross pin which was added above the trigger, which gave this pistol a better service, you know, better reliability, a longer service pistol to be used in service, a lot less issues with that. Another big change, here we go again, this Gen 2 to Gen 3, we're seeing these significant changes, was the extractor was revised and it allowed it to pop out, kind of stick out a little bit more when there was a round loaded in the chamber. It acted as a loaded indicator. This is a big deal as well. You're able to see if there was a round in the chamber with the extractor being popped out a little bit. We have the introduction of colors, a little bit of color change that Glock introduced to its lineup. So we do see some major changes taking place with this Gen 3. We're not going to be able to cover all the changes in each generation. That would take some time and I just don't want to bore you. But the important thing is there was some major changes between the Gen 2 and Gen 3. Now moving on to the Gen 4 in 2010, that's when the Gen 4 was introduced at SHOT Show. This introduced the modular back strap where you can kind of change the back, make it thicker, you know, things like that. I always choose not to put anything on because my hands are so small, but if you had bigger hands you can add that to the back strap. You have the magazine catches were enlarged and reversible, which is a big deal. You have the dual recoil spring and a host of new models were added during that time. And now moving on quickly to the Gen 5, you have a few models introduced when the Gen 5 came out, like the Glock 45. Another huge change with the Gen 5 is the marksman's barrel. Really good accuracy on that. I'm really enjoying that barrel, the change in that. Extremely accurate. You had the flared magazine well, you had the relief cut under the trigger that was added, and again we moved back to no finger grooves. So Gen 3 we did have those finger grooves added, and then in Gen 4 and then Gen 5 they were removed. So that's pretty interesting. Some people love the finger grooves, some people hate them. I you know, prefer no finger grooves. Just I get a better fit on my hand with that without the finger grooves. But love it or hate them, you can choose to have them or choose not to. So there's that. Okay, so like I said, I didn't go over every single change. I mean, with the Gen 5 in the changes to the internals, a little bit of those changes, you're getting a wider frame. So we can keep going on with those changes. But my point is this: if you look at the changes that took place from Gen 1 to Gen 2, they weren't very significant in my opinion. Not enough to make a huge impact on the firearms community and the Glock community in general. But when you look down at those changes made from the Gen 2 to the Gen 3, there were significant changes being made by Glock. And I think this has contributed to this idea that the Gen 3 is the best generation. I could be completely wrong, but this is my theory. Doing the research, talking to quite a few people, and thinking back to my experiences with people telling me their opinion why Gen 3 was the best. You know, a lot of people will say, you know, the triggers are the best. And I'll show you real quick the triggers. You can hear the sound and kind of see the take up on these triggers between Gen 3, 4, and 5. So this is Gen 3, the Glock 23 40 cal. Now we have my Gen 4 Glock 26. Now the Gen 5 Glock 19. So a lot of, you know, I've had a mixed thing where people say, you know, the trigger on the Gen 3 is just better. They wish they could have, you know, the trigger just of the Gen 3 on every other model. In my opinion, Gen 5 trigger is a really big upgrade. I personally really like the Gen 5. I think Glock really listened to their customers and made some significant changes. So back to my theory. So as we've seen briefly through those changes, kind of highlighted some of those more significant changes throughout the generations, where we really see a big shift with Glock is in Gen 3. And I think this contributed to why people love the Gen 3 so much. I call this, I kind of coined this term, the Nickelback Theory, where I don't know if any of you have heard, but you know, the band Nickelback, the band Nickelback, a lot of people just hate them. I mean, a majority of people you talk to say, "Oh, I hate Nickelback." The reason they can, you know, you ask them, what is your reason? Why do you hate Nickelback? And it's one of those things where you get a bunch of different answers, or they just don't like them because everyone else doesn't like them. I feel like this is the same idea with the Gen 3, where you have, at the time, so many changes being made, significant changes to the Glock lineup, that people just, you know, fell in love with Glock all over again, and it happened to be on Gen 3. And a lot of the people you ask nowadays, I mean, like I said, some people give, you know, specific answers, the trigger, things like that, but I feel like it's the Nickelback syndrome, where everyone at that time period, you know, shot this idea out that the Gen 3 was the best gen because all these changes were being made, and it just followed the Gen 3 throughout the years. You know, Gen 4 came out with some changes, but still the majority of these changes that were made were from 2 to 3, giving this idea that this was the best generation. And another thing to point out, you may ask the question, you know, Gen 4 to Gen 5 did have some significant changes, so what's the difference? And really, I think it comes down to timing. And you got to think of Gen 1 and Gen 2 time period compared to Gen 4, Gen 5, where there is a lot more competitors. There's a lot more other gun manufacturers making significant changes with their pistols, the same time Glock is from Gen 4 to Gen 5, where in Gen 1 and Gen 2, you're not having that much of competition. So it's going to hit a little bit harder when those changes are made. It's going to make a significant impact on the gun community, whereas today you have so many other manufacturers doing some amazing things as well. So that is just my theory. That's just kind of what I think. I have all the generations, and in different calibers and in different styles, frame sizes, and I like them all. But as far as the Gen 3 being the best generation, I don't know. I mean, that's my theory, is that it's more of an idea than a reality based on those changes being made from Gen 2 to Gen 3. I could be completely wrong, so I want to open up the comments for discussion. What do you guys think? Which generation is your favorite generation, and why? And do you think that I just completely missed the boat when it comes to my theory on why the Gen 3 is kind of marketed or still seen as the best generation? One thing I do want to point out is with the Gen 3, I know these, with the states that are a little bit more restrictive, that these are your only option, the Gen 3s, unless you're in law enforcement or you pay a significant amount of money, a ridiculous amount of money to get these off roster. So I would say you're in good hands with the Gen 3. It is still being produced today, and it is still an outstanding pistol that Glock, that Glock makes. So, in conclusion, I really just think that it was more of an idea rather than the reality of the Gen 3 being the best. I could be completely wrong, but you guys just leave it in the comments. Let me know what you think. At the end of the day, why not just have all the as many generations as you can, in my opinion. Get the Gen 3, get the Gen 4, get the Gen 4, and then get the Gen 5. Shoot them, enjoy them, have fun with them, because at the end of the day, that's all that really matters. But I hope this video was informative. I hope it gave you some things to think about. Like I said, please leave your thoughts in the comments below. Be nice to one another. Try to have some, I guess, adult discussions on why the Gen 3 is the best gen or not. Maybe you think the Gen 2 is the best gen. Maybe you think Gen 4 or 5. Whatever it may be, leave them in the comments below. Let me know what you think. Again, guys, thank you so much for stopping by and checking out this video. Please like and subscribe, and I'll catch you all in the next one. God bless.